Ram, right? And by the way, I have some of the lesson here. If you want like the printed copy, I have it here. Um, so we just had a prayer, and that's gonna be our opening prayer too, because that's the prayer that we had. We're just gonna go with that. Um, okay. Did you? What did you learn from our Sabbath school lesson? First of all, the roots of Abram. Okay, so first let's go to the memory text. If somebody can read that for me. I'm
By
going to
faith,
ask you questions today, so
says, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance, and he went out, not knowing where he was going.
I want participation today. Are you ready? Okay, Abraham, the roots of Abraham, um, the focus. When you think of Abraham, what comes in mind?
Faith.
Faith.
That's the root of it.
Yeah,
The
that's the
whole
root of it.
thing's all about faith.
Yeah. And what else?
Faithfulness of God mostly.
Yes.
I
And
think of what it says in Genesis 12, 1 through 3. I mean, that's what I think of, where he was called out to go into the land,
yeah,
the promised land, or to go where, not knowing where he was going. But, I mean, he knew he was going to Canaan, but, as far as God directing him each day by faith. But yeah, I mean, it's Genesis, 12, 1 through 3 that when I think of Abraham.
yeah. You know what? Thinking about him, he is father of all nations, right? His name is so famous up to this day. When you say Abraham, we kind of know who he is, even though when I was not a Seventh-day Adventist yet before, when I hear Abraham, I kind of know the story because that's the first thing that you learn in Genesis, his story. And it's it says here, well, I summarize everything that we have because I know we cannot do like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. It's very hard when you do that because sometimes you get stuck with that Monday and then you can never move on. But I think what we do is, because we studied our lesson, we summarize it so we can discuss it, what you got from that lesson, right? So it's magnanimity. It describes him as that. And I had to look at the dictionary this morning, and it says somebody with. Do you remember how it says? I know what it said, but I cannot whatever. But it's somebody that who has that character to forgive. Has a forgiving nature, and also a humble person, and also if when we look at the story of Abraham, we see his courage, his strength, and also his weakness at the same time, right? And it's funny because I have a question here. Given Abraham idolatrous family background, why do you think God entrusted him with such an important call? And you mentioned Genesis 12, 1 to 3, and we like to read that verse. Genesis 12, 1 to 3.
Does anybody have it?
Mhm.
Good.
I can read it.
Please.
Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed.
So we see the threefold call, which means he has to leave his home, right? And then he has to leave, obviously, his family, and then his heritage to a land that he doesn't know. Now, how would you feel if you hear the word, you hear God's voice and he tells you, you have to go to a place, right?
Well, we've experienced that in the ministry because we do get called to different places. And if you think this one was happy when her grandbabies left Illinois to go to Texas when they were very little, that was hard for her. I think there's always mixed feelings when you don't have your family, your mother, your father, especially when you're younger and they're still living and you go to somewhere different that you know how it is.
Yeah.
And you have both good and bad experiences. You trust in the Lord, you make your mistakes, you do the things right, you do the things wrong, just like everybody. I think the point with Abraham was that he was willing to go when he was asked and where he was asked.
You sharing that experience. We have been in the military 31 years with
That's
Carnell,
standard operating procedure.
and
right
it's the
there.
same. But when I don't know, my body is just like after 3 years, I'm ready to move because I know we're gonna move.
Yeah, that
and and
gets
and,
into that.
but we know where we're going. In the case of Abraham, he doesn't know, but we know where we're going, so we kind of like already find out what we need to do there, what is the custom. I remember going to Japan, and they drive on the other side. I mean, they what
Drive on the opposite, on the wrong
on the
side of the road.
opposite.
You
Yeah.
drive on
So
the
when
wrong
we
side of the
were
road.
there, we were in trouble because we were driving on and the police, when they see us, I got stopped one because I was going to the airport, and there was a lane. It's a specific lane, and I was just in there, and I'm like, wow, I'm the only one.
Should actually-
But then I was stopped by the police, and then of
Accident
course
waiting to happen.
he knows that I'm new, so they kind of forgave you. But also when we came back here, we were driving on the wrong side too. Carnell was like, Carnell, and we were like, all the traffic was coming in front of us because we're so used to it. But with Abraham, he doesn't know. He doesn't know where he's going, but the willingness to go where you don't know where you're going and you just pack and leave, that is faith, right?
That is faith.
That is faith.
But we all have places we go to that we've liked better or we've liked worse. You've had your experiences in both the military and I've had my experiences in the ministry, and some are so wonderful and some are not. And you do different things at different places because the people can be totally different.
Oh, yeah.
If you think coming from Chicago, Illinois area where there was a wide, broad mix of peoples and going to basically the south of Texas, but it was East Texas, but it was might as well have been Louisiana or because
Don't speak the language
the whole thing, the whole culture was that way. Where and honestly, and I'm ashamed to say, even within our church, 25 years or however long it's been now, well, the black people have their church and we have our church. What? We weren't used to that. What do you mean? What are you
First
talking about?
experience with racism
Yeah,
ever,
first
because
experience
I
with
was-
that kind of racism.
Because I was used to playing with all types of kids in Chicago, and when they were complaining about the kids that we were playing with in East Texas, I just remember my parents saying, we're not going to stop our kids from playing with who they want to play with.
Yeah. You know what? Going back to the story of Abraham, um, the thing is, when God says something to us, I know there was one in the Bible that I remember. He asked for a sign. We kind of do that with God. I need a sign, what to do. And you kind of need a confirmation like, okay, I hear your voice. Am I really going to do it? I need a sign. But with Abraham, he did not ask for a sign. And when they left, just imagine it says here in the faith journey is what they call it. Abraham,
For
Sarah,
the
and Lot, and they took all their possession. And you know how many servants, how many they were when they traveled? There were like 318, and it was 450 miles from Ur to the Chaldeans to Canaan. It says here, and what did God promise Abraham if he lived? Because Abraham lived a comfortable life, right? And at that time, when I was listening to the one of the, I believe it is written, um, the guest speaker said there that during that time they already have like a septic system, and everything like that, so they live really comfortable. And for you to say travel, and then you have to bring all your belonging, you know but then, what do you remember what God promised Abraham? And it can be found in Genesis 12, 2 to 3.
You will be a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing.
Mm-hmm. What's that? Sorry. Oh, you have the. I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm faced this way. I normally like this, but somehow somebody faced me like this, and I'm just like conditioned to face this way. So I'm sorry.
I think that one of the things that stand out about this particular requirement for Abraham is the stress of uncertainty. I'm going to talk about that, and I've done my research. The amount of stress that was placed on Abraham to pack up his entire family to go someplace that he doesn't even know where he's going or anything about it. How much stress that put on him, and the promise though. The promise also was a condition that you will be blessed.
Yeah.
So when we as Christians, when we're stressed out, we got to remember that we're too blessed to be stressed.
I heard that, Carnell,
Really.
and I'm gonna use it.
When you think about it, you have to say, okay, I'm in a situation, there's uncertainty and there is the unknown.
Yeah.
But as a child of God, I expect to be blessed because God said he will bless me.
You know what? I know that when somebody promised me something, I remember that promise and I hang on that promise. And especially when Carnell give his word, I make sure that I record it this time. Because when I say, "Hey, you promised," and he goes like, "I didn't promise," and I will, I name the recordings too. He promised. So, because as humans, we forget our promise. But God doesn't forget his promise. He promised a triple blessing. I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing. And in you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So this is a universal blessing, that we read in Genesis 12, 2 to 3. And you know what? What valuable insights may we discover in Abraham as portrayed in Genesis 12? What may we learn from these insights? Okay, so we already know that his faith, his firm trust in God, and he consistently worshiped. So you know what? When you talk to God and pray all the time, I remember I already mentioned to you when I was a colporteur, I was like on fire, and I can almost hear him talk to me. And so at that time, there's no GPS, and I'm a realtor, but I have a bad sense of direction. If I don't have the GPS, I don't know where I am. If you put me in the middle and turn me around, I don't know. So I'm so glad there's GPS. But before, when I was a colporteur, you won't believe it. I don't know where I'm going, but I just ask God, lead me. I don't know where this address is, but I know I will find it. And you know what? There is a promise in the Bible that if you pray, you believe it, when you ask God, you believe it in your heart, and it will happen. And everything I tell you that I ask God, even in my position right now, the work that I'm doing, when I ask Him, because as a child, my aunt told me, she was a Seventh-day Adventist, and she told me, you pray, you be faithful to God, you believe it, it will happen. And you know what? It did happen. Everything that I asked for happened. And if it doesn't happen exactly the way I want it to happen, I trust that God knows better than me. Of course, when you ask a certain thing, right? When you go like, God, I want, I pray for this, and it doesn't happen. With Sergio, I will give an example. When he tells me, I said, but remember, we prayed about this thing, so it may not be the thing that we asked for, and God also know what's good for us. So this not happening. So we learn how to trust God. And when we read about Abraham, it's already saying that he listened to God. He has like a what you call communication with God um, daily, right? And then also it says he also he built altars. So that means he does pray and then he give thanks. Why else will you build an altar? Also a remembrance that God, did this for you, right?
Just
Yes,
two quick points. One, he's 75 years old, so
that's right. He's
established
75.
himself.
Uh-huh.
He's not in that day and age. They live longer, so I guess he's middle aged or whatever it is for that day and age. Because we do have examples. Methuselah lived till,
Mhm.
so maybe I don't want to call him old, but he's not exactly young either.
Yeah.
He's kind of right in there. And also, just like Moses took the group of people out of Israel and was responsible, he's responsible for these people that are going with him. He has to be the leader, and they have to follow. And I'm sure that not every time, and we know as wives that Sarah may have been on board, or she may not have been on board, but we don't know what was complained about by the servants. You're taking me somewhere and you want me to fix a meal, but you don't, have access to this, or you don't have access to that. So we're only given a brief snapshot, really, once he takes off, of what's going on in his life. We know he's responsible for these people, and these people in his culture go with him because they're his servants or his responsibility. We know Lot with him at
Mostly the
Choice,
shepherds.
or that's their livelihood. We
Yeah.
don't know if there were tent cities around him or how exactly. I'm assuming it was a tent city around him,
Mhm.
much maybe like the Kurds or whoever that travels. So it's a traveling thing once they start, and he's the guy in charge. So he's getting whatever complaint is happening along with having to trust God.
You know what? And I'm glad that everything is written in the Bible. We can see the good things and the bad things, because now we're seeing that he is, after all, a human being, right?
Yes.
He's susceptible to what we're susceptible
What
to.
happened in Egypt?
Yeah, that's what we're going to. So there was famine, it says, in Canaan, right? So they had to take a detour. And when they did a detour, they went to Egypt. So
Why'd they
we
go to
know
Egypt?
the famous story there and in Egypt. So
Well, there was a famine in the land, so he didn't trust God, so he had to go to Egypt because they got all the good stuff down there.
yeah,
Right?
and also when he went to Egypt, right? He was afraid because then, you know, what
Sarah
happened
was
with
a nice
Sarah?
looking woman.
Yeah, and Sarah is a beautiful woman. So
And the Pharaoh noticed her.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
Pharaoh noticed her.
That's
So
how pretty she was. I mean, we're not just talking regular beauty.
yeah,
I'm sure
Yeah,
that,
she
the
must be
last
like
measure
really.
that came in, she had to have been a real beauty because she caught the Pharaoh's eye.
Oh,
Yes.
We
And
know
then
that.
Oops.
what happens because we already know the story. What happened when they got there, what did Abraham do?
You lied.
Yeah.
You became a liar.
Well, they said it's a half lie because he was still related to Sarah because they have the same father, right? So he was saying that just tell them that you're my sister. But do you know that half a lie is a lie? And I heard this very recently. In fact, it was just last night, the other night, when I was asking a family member, because we heard that he was fooling around. And I confronted him and he said, you know what? The girl never asked me if I was married. So what does that mean? I said that is deceitfulness because you didn't tell her that you're married. But because the girl didn't ask, so that was okay for him. The girl never asked. And then of course the girl fell in love with him. And then of course now he tells her that the girl asked finally, are we gonna get married? And of course he said, I'm married. But people today, when you keep something a secret, it's a lie. So he lied, and that is kind of like not trusting God too, right? That He will deliver. But what did God say? He used Pharaoh actually to tell Abraham, like, why didn't you tell me that that's your wife, right? So God can use unbelievers too, right? To kind of like tell us our mistake. That's how God loves us. And Abraham was supposed to be an example to us. Just say, babe, so I can hear you. I'm sorry because I'm like, hi, okay. Yeah. I think they put me here because the mic is here, but then you can move the mic. Um, so go ahead.
No, when I look and read about Abraham, I see it's so human of us. I mean, he did stuff that the average Joe or the average Jackie would do. I mean, this is stuff that people do. You think of these things of ways to get out of certain situations. You tell lies, white lies, a lie is a lie, and that's what people do. But it also shows me that if God can use a person that's flawed to accomplish great things, David comes to mind, then there's hope for me
Yes.
because I'm a flawed person, but there's hope for me. And that's what gives me the the strength and the faith, if you will, to continue on each day knowing that there's a place up there for me. As flawed as I may be, there's still hope for me.
Well, it says here that Abraham is a classic example of salvation by grace through faith. Because if it weren't for by grace, Abraham, like all of us, would have no hope. So I'm glad that there are examples in the Bible like this, because when we sin, and we fall short of the glory of God, right? And we feel so discouraged, and that is Satan's way for us to give up on God. But we always have to remember that God is a forgiving God. It doesn't give us license that we learn that, hey, Abraham did this, that we can do it, and then ask for forgiveness, because then, it's not really truly that you're doing, you're walking in God's way. But as to me, as long as you're doing what you know is right, we will stumble here and there. But we can always come to Him and ask Him for forgiveness. Did you want to say something? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Um, so,
How do you think that Sarah felt as his wife,
mhm.
that it was convenient for him to present her as his sister, which actually made her eligible to be the wife of Pharaoh? I mean, do you not think that affected their marriage also? in the years to come. I know it was a more subservient society, and maybe to her it was just being expedient because she's used to having nice things. We know they've lived a pretty comfortable life, and that was his way to get nice things again. And maybe he was missing nice things. He needed the things. In his mind, God wasn't providing the things he needed. And we do this too. God wasn't providing what he thought he needed. So he figured out the solution to handle it.
But I think that has to kind of sort of be coupled with fear too, because probably knew of these other nations. So, you're hearing things about wars and stuff. You're hearing about the clashes between the different, peoples, whether you're in your own town or you're not, you're hearing stuff. Word of mouth travels quickly. And we know that that's not the only time that that Abraham was going to use that lie or that half truth about Sarah being his sister.
Yeah.
He did use that again, and it's not
Yeah, you're right.
necessarily because he didn't learn from it. We didn't have the choice because it was Adam and Eve's choice of bringing sin into this world. We're born into a sinful world. But as we're growing, as we're living through life, that's how we're learning, and this is why God allows us to go through some of these tests and these trials. It's to build us, and if we have a relationship with Christ, even if we end up falling into the same temptation again,
Yeah.
it's showing us just that much more, not only to hope, but how to better trust in Him.
Yeah.
And how to do things better in the future. And I think Abraham was learning all of that because he came from a land that was very advanced for their time and age.
Yeah.
And they heard different things. They were believing in different gods, and yet Abraham still was like, I'm still going to go this way, even though I don't know where I'm going. And he's not perfect. And I think that's part of the reason why he's in there is because we have to see how God makes things perfect, even in our imperfectness.
Yeah, that's very good. And when you talk about, how Sarah felt, I think because then Abraham presented it to her like we're gonna be killed, if or I'll be killed.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
obviously you don't want to lose your husband, so you do everything to kind of like, and in some situation, even if you're in another country, you are kind of like, especially when they have weird rules and you're confronted, and then sometimes you feel like you don't want to do it, but you gotta do it, or else, let's say you're traveling, if you don't do it, then you're gonna be delayed, and then the plane will leave you, and kind of like you have to do something, and then you just say, forgive me, God, then I have to do this, But uh, learning, I, you know what? I believe that when Abraham was confronted with that, he learned, especially when Pharaoh talked to him. Now it's like God telling him, because you don't listen to me, I have to use Pharaoh to talk to you that what you're doing is wrong. So I know that he realizes this. And then, you know what? There's this very close relationship with God. We now we go to when, because we're talking about his character, when he went to, when Lot was, what you call, when there were when their what you call people were fighting, right? Because they're not getting along. Then they have to separate, right? Lot and Abraham. But normally, when you are the older one, you get to choose, and you get to tell the younger one to you go to that land, okay, or you. But then, what did he do that is very unselfish, right? We all know the story. He asked Lot to choose, right? So, and Lot, what did Lot choose?
To go down there and live in Sodom, down in the valley.
Sodom and Gomorrah,
There's a bunch
To
of
live where it was
really,
where it was really comfortable.
evil people.
Yeah.
comfortable. To live where it
So
was comfortable.
I think he was living, using his sight, right? Like, oh,
And they're all
this
cousins
is
too,
better.
by the way.
This is better. you know, whereas, Abraham was still, doing it by faith because he knows that God will take care of him no matter what.
But Lot may have also been like, well, my uncle, he's used to living in the tents now, and I've got this family and they're young, they need educational opportunities, and
Yeah,
they
right.
need, some of the things the city, because we do this all the time.
Yeah, we do
We
this all
want
the
to get
time.
on Lot, but let's be realistic. We look at things sometimes that way too. Well, I can't go over here, or my kid needs this, or I need to take care of this my kid needs to go play baseball on Sabbath because, if he doesn't, he won't get into a good college and he's very good at baseball, or whatever rationalization that all of us use.
Yeah.
And we all do it.
Yes. And you know what? The thing with Abraham is he trusts God completely. So we know in the story that God took him, woke him up, right, and asked him to go look. Look to the west, look to the east, look to the north, look to the south. This is all yours.
That
See?
was his
But
change.
isn't that the challenge?
That's a
To
challenge.
trust God completely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean that when we study our lesson and we come to Sabbath school or we read the Bible or we hear a sermon, we have to take what is being said and apply it to our lives as it is today. What's applicable for me today? How do I take what I heard or what I read and apply it to me today? Okay, it's easy to say that Abraham trusts God completely, but do we trust God completely?
We should. If he is our creator, he knows from beginning to end, and he is in control of our lives. It's so simple. It's like you say, it's a no-brainer, right? Go ahead.
Um, Also, with that is like when we try to make excuses for things, that's like the devil just trying to say like, oh, like it's okay, like just one last time, or
Yeah.
us trying to verify it, like oh, it's good, like that's where you're saying like we didn't apply to our lives, like it's something not good. We obviously not like should know this, so you shouldn't be eating something. It shouldn't be like maybe one last time.
Yeah.
It should be like no, like it's written, it's going to be a sin, and we know what the outcome of sin is. So that's why I think that like it's hard because when you're trying to actually change yourself for the better, but you have to just
The more sinning you do, the
keep
harder it
reminding
becomes to
yourself.
quit.
Yeah. And you know what? That's very good that you touch about food also because you know what? Um, I'm going to give my example. My mom, I opened the refrigerator when we visited one time and I saw bacon, so I like our maid, right? Our helper. I said, what is it doing this? Oh, your mom. It's your mom. So I asked my mom, but my mom said, oh, your uncle. Your uncle asked me to put it here. I'm like, my uncle got two refrigerators. What do he need our refrigerator for? But I know this is for her, right? But I said, Ma, I said, you have to stop eating that because it's not good for you. And because, obviously Satan will use good stuff. He will not attract us with something that does not taste good. It tastes good, but it's bad for us. So complete trust in him because these food are not good for us. When you go to the doctor, that's the first thing that they're gonna tell you: stay away from from this food. And I shared with you, I have a friend before that she is sick. Yeah, she can't even walk, and she's my age. Um, but because she eat those kind of food all the time, and I told her, because you eat, and both of her and her husband are in the same situation. But God gave us actually a lot of, when you open the Bible, that's the secret right there. Even the health, about health, how to live, it's all in there. Even for us not to think, because we stress ourselves to death. But if we can ask God and then leave it up to Him. But remember the prayer that you said about, one story that you said, I remember, where this person was praying and praying. But then God is saying, what can I do? But I'm helping you, but you won't let me, right?
But see, sometimes we're like Abraham because this is the one feeling if Abraham had one. When time would go by, Like even with the promise of the child, he would figure out a way that that could happen. You know, he was a take charge kind of person. He
Mm-hmm.
was used to that role. And we do this too, because as time goes by in our lives, something doesn't happen either that we want or we think God wants. Sometimes we get impatient with the wait, and so we figure out a way to do it. And many times the way we figure out to do it, just like Abraham,
Create
is
more
not the
problem.
right way. You know,
Yeah.
I tell a story on myself with my daughter. I used to read, and he's been discounted now, but the book that was big when she was little was, you know, read Dr. Spock. It'll tell you how to raise your babies. And I read some of Dr. Spock. But what I didn't take into account, and he said, you know, when your little kid is angry, just hold them. What happened with my daughter when I held her was it just built resentment. It didn't end up helping the situation, but I didn't know that.
But
Yeah.
that's because
So I wasn't mothering trying to be hurtful.
Yeah.
But I was the independent, stubborn type of spirit that is like I had to
She
learn it.
will.
I had to learn it the hard way. If anything, but I think in the case of like with Lot and Abraham, I think you start to see a different side of Abraham. Because when it comes to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, God's already, setting this up with Abraham, and Abraham keeps on pushing the question. Well, but what if there are only, 10
3,
people?
5, 10,
And,
yeah.
he's going, what about, he's thinking, my nephew Lot is in that city with his family. He was having to learn from a distance that, hey, I just have to trust that whatever God is going to do in this moment with Lot, that it's going to work out. And he couldn't just go in and step in and save his family.
Mhm.
But it took him a long while to get there. And that didn't mean that he still didn't push the envelope,
Yeah.
further still later on in life.
Emery, you have something to add?
This I was doing like a sermon earlier. It was like in Luke 22, and it was basically saying how sometimes people tempt Satan
Yeah.
to then use his powers for us. So I was saying, but he replied, "Lord, I am ready to go with you." This is Peter, to prison and death, and right there, like you're opening the door for them, Satan to like you're reliant, like self-reliant, and like I was writing notes. That like self-sufficiency, the idea that I have arrived, I can take care of myself spiritually. The most dangerous place a Christian can get is where you think you can do it, and and then look what happened. You said that you're gonna, deny me 3 times, which he did, and then once all that happened, then later, Jesus said, like now you're able to leave because he had to see you fall, like he had to fall, and like look what happened. And you think that you can do everything yourself, and like I'm ready to do this, I'm ready to open the door for Satan to, do his thing, and then look what happened. And then Peter then denied Jesus. So sometimes that self, like think we can do it ourselves, it's not it.
And I think that's the one that's very dangerous when we do that, because then you kind of don't need God in a way because you're relying on yourself. That's why I believe the example that Abraham showed us, that he was in constant prayer. Prayer really uh, help you, because it's just like when you don't see your dad for a long time and you forgot the rules. To me, it's like that. You forget, especially when you don't spend that time with your devotion and stuff, because devotion is very important. That's why I always tell my family, right, that we have to stop, because there's only 24 hours a day, and then we get so busy with work, with everything. You know what, if we are really so, we know already the beginning from the end in a way, because God revealed it to us what's going to happen. Why can't we just, really put all our faith? Because we know we have to work, we know we have to get there, but then don't lose focus on the most important thing. Because in the end, if we die now, something happened, we had an accident, whatever, then the first thing you see is God. So that, to me, I treat every day like it's my last day. I just do it because, yeah, I was near death at one point, and I know that I can die anytime. And so that is the most important thing, that you have to put yourself into that. You have to look forward on the things that God is promising to us, right? He promised us eternal life. He promised, oh, that's the bell now. That's we have 5 minutes.
And it's funny because one thing that I noticed is that if you make God the first thing you think about when you wake up, it's as if He stretches your day.
Yes.
If you make the first thing you do waking up is your personal devotion with God, either by yourself, with your spouse, with your family, you notice that you have time to do every single thing you needed to do that day because God takes care of it all.
Yeah, and same thing with sleeping in the night. Where Carnel always tell me, why? How can you sleep like that? Even when I go to the bathroom 5 times, you believe it or not, because I'm not disciplined. Wherein you don't drink anymore at a certain time. I love my water, so I just drink. So I will get up 5 times, but as soon as I go to the bathroom, get back, I'm gone. So Carnel is like, how can you do that? Because when he wake up, and he hears me snoring, he can't sleep anymore. So he goes like, please let me sleep first, right? But yeah, he goes, please let me sleep first. So when I'm kind of washing the dishes, I see him rushing to the stuff, because I know he wants to go to sleep first. But in the prayer that I have in the night is like, God, I give it all to you. Please take care of everything. So I sleep well because I know he's gonna take care of it. There's no use worrying about it. I saw a hand, Corey, and then
One thing I thought about when you think about busy schedule, sometimes I get in my brain and remember that that verse says, "What the gain of man, the gain of the world, and lose his own soul."
yes,
And the thing is, like sometimes you get so focused on what I gotta do, and usually very stuff you gotta do is all financial. Like you gotta do this to make money. You gotta do this to make money.
yeah,
But the thing is, what's that gonna do? Pretty much, we lose our time with God. What's that gonna do? It's just like a marriage. Like if you spend so much time working, your marriage is gonna fall apart because, like, pretty much you're not spending time with each other. You're not connecting with each other.
that's
And
right.
then when you try to get connected, you realize you don't even know each other anymore. So
Mhm.
the thing is, you have to take that time to focus in on your relationship with God, just like it's a marriage too, in a way, and don't forget about it and put it off to the side. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because you know what, Brenton, I didn't forget about you. Go ahead.
Yes, God has the power to stop time for His people. It's proven in Hezekiah when the son died.
Yeah, yeah,
He did. So it's a fact that I don't know how He does it, but He does it.
yeah.
He gives you more time if you spend time with Him.
Yeah, the most important thing, is our time. That's the most valuable thing. So I tell Sergio all the time, don't waste your time, son. God gave us 24 hours, but what do you do with that time? First of all, you have to have your priorities. God first, because everything falls, nicely if you do that, right? So the other thing that we're always almost closing now, but Abraham give thanks, right? We did not we passed Lot. What happened to Lot? Because Lot got captured, and even though they don't have the whatever relationship, right? He still remember Lot, and he went there to rescue him. But at the same time, everything that God had done, he set an example of giving tithe to God, because there's a story about Melchizedek that we didn't even touch, right? But that's the time that he gave what his tenth, right? And it's because it says here, it's not because he what you call this, I like this word because I have to read it or else I will mess it up. It says returning tithe to God is a powerful indicator of faith, as well as great faith building act. True tithing is an act of faith. So the character of, is really something that we really want to possess, not the richness in this world, but is revealed by the works, not by occasional good deeds and occasional misdeed, but by the tendency of habitual words and acts, right? Abram's character was not determined by his ethical lapse in Egypt, but by the tendency of his habitual words and act. And it says here that Abraham understood tithe not as a gift to God, but as a gift from God. We keep forgetting that God gave us 100%. And He's giving us the 90%, right? And then we're still kind of having a problem with that 10%. So that that's God, all God's. So sometimes, as your treasurer, I urge you to believe in tithing, because like when I was a small young girl, my aunt, the same aunt, told me about tithing. And I was selling candies when I was young. I was very, I want to earn my allowance, so I would sell pencil. I would sell my classmate paper, candies, whatever. And my grandmother will send me all these goodies that I can sell. And then the next month, I will be asking her again where the goodies. And he said, "Where are the profit?" But I said, "I all gave it to God." Because I know that God will take care of me. So my grandmother kept sending me the stuff, but I keep giving to God. But you know what? I can tell you that my barrel is always full. Somehow, even though, Asian, our custom is to take care of our families. And I've done that since I was young and I started working. And still I don't I mean I'm okay. And because I know that the money that we have is not ours. It's just God is looking at you if you're a good steward. And I pray that God will bless us. And I know we're already closing, so I will ask the pastor to close us in prayer.
Okay. Dear Father in heaven, we are so grateful on how you have taken us and provided for us. I pray that we would learn the lesson that we should always make sure that we have that which is set aside that is really yours. And then I pray that you will bless us even more with what we have left. And I ask this all in Jesus' precious and holy name. Amen.
Amen.